And then I'd turn around and like there'd be some dude standing on Vinny's bass drum, like completely naked with like a drumstick hanging out of his asshole.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Now, typically, in the beginning of every episode, I'll go to Wikipedia or Discogs or somewhere online and find a write-up of the band I'm about to talk about. Sometimes it's a little difficult because these bands were only around for like 2 years or so, where the person I'm talking to doesn't really have a lot of stuff written up about them online anywhere, which is cool because this podcast is now documenting that time period for these people that I'm speaking to, which is something I didn't realize was happening until people have started telling me about that recently, which is awesome. If you don't know who Less Than Jake is and you needed me to do a write-up about who they were, then I don't understand why you're listening to this episode, because they were such a gigantic band back in the day, and they were a huge band for me, which I'll talk to Chris about in this episode. I'm not going to go into how I heard about Less Than Jake because I go over that in the interview, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this section of the intro. So I'm just going to go into the fact that I got Chris on the Skype, and this is what we talked about. His upcoming book, meeting Roger for the first time, the song Fucked, how they marketed the fuck out of their band, naked people at their shows, how they found Alan Rappaport's house for their backyard show that they played there, and a ton more. Make sure you check out Chris's new podcast called DeMakes A Podcast. It's where he discusses the ins and outs of songwriting with a variety of guests from the world of music. Some of his guests are John Feldman from Goldfinger, Jarrett Reddick from Bowling for Soup, Roger from Less Than Jake, Bill Stevenson from The Descendants, and Anthony from Bayside. Well, actually, that's all the episodes so far, so you don't really have a lot to catch up on. If you're looking for older episodes, you can go to thiswasthescene.com, and there's a couple things you can do. One, there's a category function on the side of the website, so when you scroll down, you'll see it there. You can go through that list and see whatever floats your boat. Some of the categories are like Cali, Chicago, emo, Florida, hardcore. I mean, some of them, just reading all of them, but I'll kind of jump around. We got record stores, recording studios, roadies, bands, obviously, ska. So the website isn't just like a place where I'll post the interviews. It's a really good resource to go there and just kind of stay there for a minute and be like, well, what other episodes do they have? And you can also use the search function. So for me, I was looking up Vinny's episode, which is episode 45, and all I did was go to search and put in Vinny, and voila, Vinny came up, and it's episode 45. Because I wanted to mention that I talked to Vinny from Less Than Jake, and that's episode 45. So when you're done with Chris's episode, you should go back and listen to that episode. And then you can just keep going to other episodes from there. Cool. Thank you for all my Patreon supporters that keep the podcast going. You people are fantastic. It's only $1 a month. If you go to thiswasthescene.com and you click on the Patreon button that's in the homepage, and it's also on the side, or you can go to patreon.com/thiswasthescene and you can sign up for $1 a month, which equals to $12 a year, which equals to, like I said so many times, 3.5 cups of Starbucks coffee that you'd have this year. So if you want to support the podcast in any way, please go do that. There's also a donation button. There's also merch that you can buy. I'm trying to think of new ideas for merch that I can put up there. I have the options for like a shit ton of things. Obviously, t-shirts and hoodies and hats and coffee mugs and like pillowcases and what the fuck? Like, I mean, throw pillows, not pillowcases. There's like just a bunch of things. So if you have any ideas, you can email thiswasthescene@gmail.com. If you want to just contact me in general, you can email thiswasthescene@gmail.com. And before I go into the episode, you can go check out houseofmerch.com, which is a sponsor of the podcast. You can find a ton of shirts from your favorite bands on there. There's also kids apparel, so you just go in the top in the search, just put in a name or just go through bands or whatever, and you can find what you're looking for. You can use the promo code SCENE to get 10% off, and there's also free shipping. So again, houseofmerch.com, use the promo code SCENE, SCENE, to get 10% off, and there's free shipping. Cool. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I actually talked to Vinny and I asked him a bunch of questions, but like I want to get your perspective of that time. I think it was a year ago when I interviewed. It was a while back, so I forget everything he said, so there might be some repeats. But real quick though, a couple things. One, how did you guys record the Just Like Andy video?
So we did that all in our, personal homes, our own houses. And Buddy, our trombone player, he edited, put it all together. So only two guys live in Gainesville still, Roger, our bass player, and Buddy, our trombone player. So me, JR, and our drummer, Matt, we all live outside of Florida. So and the fact that, everyone else has been doing these quarantine videos, we thought it'd be cool to do our own.
Yeah, I saw you interviewed John Feldman. I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but did they talk about how they've been doing their videos?
No, we really didn't get into that with John, because my podcast strictly revolves around songwriting. So I have a guest each week pick a defining song from their career that we analyze and critique and break down during the show. So we don't really get into too much stuff outside of that.
That's awesome. How'd you come up with that idea?
I didn't. The producer of my show, Chris Fafalios, we were talking. We've been working on a lot of projects together. He's also managing me outside of the band, and Chris said, you got to do a podcast. It's going to be great for you. And I was like, yeah, everyone does a podcast, man. And people have told me I should do one over the years. I'm like, yeah, but everyone's doing them, whatever. And he's like, yeah, but they're not you.
Yeah. And
I said, okay. So what the hell am I going to talk about? Because I don't just want it to be a random whatever. I'd like to have and he said, well, you're writing custom songs and jingles and doing voiceovers for people now, and that revolves around songwriting. So he came up with the concept. You should have an artist come on and have it be about a defining song from their career and that you analyze. So Chris came up with the idea. I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, everyone says that. There's been a bunch of people that I've interviewed, and I've said, you really should start a podcast. Like Norman from Texas is the Reason, we were talking, and he just had just a lot of information, really well-spoken guy. And I was like, dude, you should really do this. He's like, yeah, but everyone has one. It's like, no, if you really make it very specific, and if you already have an audience who has followed you, you're going to have a good start. And then there's always just that one specific thing that people are like, oh, I would totally listen to that. Or like with this, I appreciate, like if I tell someone, they either are, holy shit, that's awesome, or they're like, why the hell would I listen to it? I was like, that's exactly what I want. I want there to be a hard yes or no. Like I don't want them to be like, well, I guess. It's like, no, I really want you to want to listen to this.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because he had also, that was another selling point to me when Chris had said, you already have such a great springboard to jump off of with this. So many people. You've been in the music business for almost 30 years. So it's not like you're starting from scratch, even though you are. You're gonna be able to build up listeners pretty quickly. And everything he said was right. It's been awesome so far.
That's cool, man. Yeah, the topic is such. It's even when you said that, I thought that was fascinating, because I'd love to hear the behind the scenes of the people you're talking to and just breaking a song down. Yeah,
you should check out an episode. It's been the reviews so far have been fantastic.
That's awesome. Have you do you remember Brendan from Slapstick, or now Lawrence Arms and all that?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm sure you guys keep in touch.
Once you meet Brendan, he's hard to forget.
Have you checked his podcast out? I'm not gonna sit here and talk about other people's podcasts all the time, but like he started one where he's breaking down the Lawrence Arms albums. This guy who is a buddy of his had a podcast, and he presented the idea because they have a new album coming out. So they're taking every album and they're talking about what was happening around it, and then they break down every song. It's fucking awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, I did not know he was doing that, but yeah, Brendan and I, we keep in touch. Haven't recently. I actually thought about him recently, but we talk on social media once in a while. But I will check that out. And he's actually someone that I'm going to ask to be on my podcast. I've known Brendan for years, and he is a funny son of a bitch.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to keep on it, but just listen to some of them. He's really hilarious.
Yeah.
And he just has no holds barred, which is really smart. Again, the structure is the way I like to do this, because and before I get into that, I just want to say, like, you guys were a huge influence on me. I was in a band, Sean Smith from Lanemeyer.
Of course.
Okay, so
yes.
Me and Sean are like really tight friends. He was my drummer, or we were in Lanemeyer together. When we started playing, before we changed into Lanemeyer and we found Sean, me and my buddy Chris were in this other band, and around that time is when I believe Pezcore was already out, or had just come out, and like Losers, Kings, and Things We Don't Understand. Fuck, am I getting that? I forget. Yeah, I got that name right.
You got it right.
Yeah,
You got it right.
those albums were out, and I think the Losing Streak was about to come out. This was as I was getting into the local scene, and when you guys came through Jersey a lot, which I'll get into more later, but I remember just hearing about you and buying your albums and getting Pezcore, and like that was one of the albums, and you guys were one of those bands where it made me go, I need to do, like, these guys are an inspiration for me to just keep being in a fucking band. So I just really wanted to state that before we start talking.
That's really cool, man. Thank you. Yeah, Jersey was our second home outside of Florida from the very beginning. So yeah, I'd like to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, we think you guys you were playing a Legion Hall show in Ridgewood potentially, which obviously wouldn't remember or wouldn't have to remember. But my friend,
no. You don't understand. I remember everything.
Really?
Yeah, I remember things. People are like, how do you know that? Like, go check out my Instagram page sometime. I'm getting ready to do a book pretty soon. December 4th, 2018, I started with one picture from the past and wrote a story with it. I did it for a year, 365 pictures and an accompanying story that's getting binded into a book for later this year. And Google helped a lot with some specific dates when I wanted to get into that. But for the most part, I have like this weird photographic memory that's done me zero good in all of my years except for this damn book. It came in handy.
That's awesome. Wait, when is that going to come out?
That'll be out later this year. I think we're going to start trying to shoot for taking pre-orders around October 1st. Smart Punk Records is releasing the book. It's the first book they've ever done. We're going to do all sorts of different cool bundles and things with it, trying to get it sold around the holidays later this year. But the book's called Blast from the Past. It's a 365-day photo journal into the past. And like I said, all the stories have already been released one day at a time on Instagram, and now they're getting binded into a book. And I saw the proofs of it recently. It looks amazing. It looks like a yearbook. It's really cool.
That's awesome. I'm definitely gonna get that, and I'll definitely. I have a decent size fan base, but I'll definitely post that when it comes out to help.
It's cool. Thank you, Mike.
It. Yeah, man. All right, so let's kind of go back in the past. And what I want to do, like I said, is I break this up into kind of going back into what got into music, then what led you to get into the scene, or into the scene, playing in the band, talk about some stories from back then, and just kind of live in that era. And like some things, obviously, since you have a very good memory, there'll probably be some really great stories. But
oh yeah.
So like go back in time where you were a kid and there was something on either TV or on the radio where it was, obviously music related, and it just caught your attention where you were like, holy shit, I got to pay attention to this.
Like music wise?
Yeah.
Well, my mom and dad were singers. So my dad started playing professionally when he was 18, when he graduated high school. And my mom joined him 10 years later, and they sang together professionally until 2005. My grandmother had gotten sick and had to move in with my parents, and I kind of put an end to that for them. My earliest memories were carrying the tambourine bag in and out of the microphone bag in and out of dirty bars and clubs and parties and anniversary parties and graduations and bar mitzvahs. My dad got hired for all kinds of stuff, and he had a little drum machine, a 12-string Rickenbacker guitar that he played, and then my mom joined him, and she played tambourine and sang with him, and they harmonized amazing, and they were very popular in Michigan. Then we moved to Florida, and they were even more popular down there. Dad would work during the day, and then they would do that another 2 to 3 days a week on top. Did it forever. It was their social life and supplemental income, and so. Music was encouraged from it's one of the first things I ever remember was just, putting records on the record player. And, my parents never had a problem. It didn't matter if I brought in a Slayer record or a Stryper record. They didn't care. Music was music in my house, and it was accepted. And so I was very fortunate in that aspect.
So did you think at that age, a lot of people I've talked to, they will say that it was a song on the radio or a music video or some band, but the fact that it was your parents, it's interesting. I think I've may have heard some people that they did have parents who were musicians, but was that the introduction of you saying, "Oh, when I grow up, I want to do this"?
I don't know if it was then that I knew that I wanted to do it, but it was natural to get up in front of people, and I liked the attention from it because from when I was 2 years old. my dad would, get me up on his lap and I would get up and sing a song. I'd sing a Neil Diamond song or something with him, and the audience would just go, completely crazy, where, whatever bar he was playing in or whatever, because, there's this sweet little boy sitting on his lap, and they all thought it was cute. And I'm sure the 18 beers they drank helped. But this was the late 70s, early 80s. So this was a time period where, people were throwing down. So, I fed off that from an early age. I got this screaming applause that was just like, oh, this is cool.
That's awesome. Did you start playing guitar at an early age?
Well, my dad always had guitars around the house, and I knew a D chord or a G chord and stuff, but no, I never really played. I always fancied myself as a singer. I always thought that I was just going to be a singer. Jesus Christ, I just realized that, I've been touring a lot, especially to England, probably about 100 times I've been to that country, because I just said the word fancied a lot. Jesus Christ. Let's get back into American mode here, Chris. American English.
Come back over the pond.
I always thought of myself as just a singer. So I sang in bands in high school. Our old drummer, Vinny, and I grew up together in Port Charlotte, Florida. It's the town where my parents, sang and whatnot. And so I sang in a band that he was in. They were looking for a singer. And so it was a hardcore band, and I just sang. And then I went away to college, and my brother had gotten this guitar that sat under his bed, and was a Christmas or a birthday gift for him for when he was 13. I thought, what the hell? I'm going to Gainesville. I'm just going to throw the guitar, in the back of the car, and drive 3 hours north. And I don't know, maybe I'll play it one of these days. And I got up there. It was the summer of before the fall semester was going to start. I started in the summer, and I was going to record stores, and I would see these flyers, and at the bottom of them, of course, this is before,
the internet.
Before the internet, social media. Thank
Yeah.
you. You would tear the little piece of paper off at the bottom with a phone number, and I was calling these people. They singer wanted, and I'd see these flyers around clubs and record stores, and so I'd call, and I did a couple auditions, and it was just music at that time was, this is 1991. It was really all over the place. I mean, you were getting out of the 80s hair metal thing. There was a backlash for that. The 80s novelty songs, the cheesiness, and now you were getting into the 90s, and there was kind of an identity crisis. So I'd walk in, and there'd be one guy with a mohawk with a Bad Religion shirt on. There'd be another guy that looked like Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, and then there'd be a guy that looked like he was a Queensryche or something, and they'd be like, "Here, we want you to sing this. It's got to sound like Bad Religion mixed with Queensryche mixed with Pearl Jam." I'm like, "You guys are high." So I did a couple of those, and then finally, one day I took that guitar out, and I'm like, "Okay, I need to figure this out." And I was playing 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. I was just putting records on and just picking out chords. I was blessed with a good ear from my dad and my mom. I could hear things. I could always sing in pitch, even before I learned how to sing, so to speak. But I could hear things. So I just started, playing songs, and I was communicating with Vinny, who was still living in Port Charlotte. So it was only about 4 months after I really started playing guitar, 3 or 4 months. I went down in November of 91. We recorded the first Less Than Jake demo on a 4-track. I played the bass and the guitar on it. That was kind of where the seeds were sown for all this.
You guys were always a ska band from that demo, right?
No, we were just it was just him and I. We were a 3-piece punk band, though. We didn't have a horn section. We didn't start playing ska for another 2 years. So we had a different bass player too. Originally, we had this guy we met in Gainesville. He was with us for about 6 months, and we played probably 12 or 13 shows as Less Than Jake in Gainesville with him. And then things didn't work out, and we had a lull of maybe. So that took us up till we played those 12 shows with him, 10 or 12 shows up, and that would have been from the first show was Tuesday, July 14th, 1992 at Club Velvet in Gainesville, Florida, which is now called the Atlantic. And I told you about that memory.
That's awesome, man. I'm going to love this. This is going to be
great. Wait till we get to New Jersey. And then from there, we played with his name was Chris too. We played with Chris up until probably October or so, and then things weren't working out, and Vinny and I were kind of disillusioned. And around December, my roommates were these 2 girls at the time, and I went to high school with them. and we lived in an apartment together, condo. And I came home one night, and one of them said, "Hey, I met this guy at the dorms the other night. And aren't you looking for someone to be in your band?" I'm like, "Yeah." Well, what does he play? Well, he plays guitar. And I'm like, "Well, maybe I can convince him to play bass." And that was Roger. It was like 3 nights later, I came home from work or from school or something. I walked into my apartment, and there's this guy sitting there. And "What's up?" "Hey, I'm Roger." "Oh, what's up?" I said, "You play, huh?" He said, "Yeah." So come back to my room, and I had my amp and guitar in there, and he picked it up. And as soon as he started playing, I had my shit moment. I'm like, that's the guy.
Wow.
I knew. I'm like, that's the guy. Because then I heard him sing, and I was like, okay. And now we were already harmonizing from day one together. I mean, it was like pretty quickly that maybe another 3 or 4 months he moved in with us, me and Vinny and Vinny's ex-girlfriend at the time. And we all shared an apartment together, and we had to have acoustic guitars, and we were playing every cover song under the sun and harmonizing together. And so, yeah, that's how that whole thing happened.
And this is when you guys were in college?
Yeah, so we were all still in college at this point.
At what point did you get into the scene, though?
I got introduced to punk rock. You got to remember, I lived in a town that was, I mean, middle of nowhere, Florida. The only record store we had, was like in a mall, and we didn't get that till late. Like, you had to drive 30 miles to Fort Myers or Sarasota to get anything. If you wanted to see a show, you had to drive 2 hours to Tampa, and it wasn't like my dad was letting me go to see a random Tuesday night show up the road. I was sheltered in that respect, but I met Vinny. Actually, it was prior to Vinny. Probably would have been about 13 or 14 years old. I was introduced to the Misfits. I'm like, okay, this is different, because you got to remember, again, everything was either on the radio or MTV. That's all you knew back then, unless you had a punk rock friend that it could introduce you to magazines and stuff, because it wasn't turn your smartphone on and figure out what's going on in the world. It didn't exist. From there, it went to Sex Pistols, Dead Kennedys, Bad Religion, and all this time I was really into like thrash metal and like, getting into really harder edge music. I liked all the 80s pop stuff, all the 80s pop metal. I just like good songs. I never cared what genre it was, but I got introduced to punk rock. I loved the rawness of it. And then when I met Vinny, in November of 1989, and that's when he had asked me to sing for his band. He was 4 years older than me. He had already he had left high school. Went and got his GED, didn't graduate. And so he was like the elder statesman. And I was 15 years old when I met him. He said, "Yeah, I want you to sing." And I want it to be like these bands. He was really into like really hard stuff like Subhumans and DI and Verbal Assault, and just so, Meat Men, just all this, harder, really snotty punk rock stuff. And that's what the first band was kind of bore out of. And from there, it just snowballed. Then I started getting like the punk rock zines. And then I was like, well, what is Lookout Records? Well, what is Epitaph Records? And what is this label? And what's that label? And cool, that looks like a cool record cover. And then I started venturing into the record stores. And so by the time I left for Gainesville, I had already had a steady diet of about 3 years of punk rock. And then it really took off when I got to Gainesville, and I got dropped off there. I was 4 months shy of my 18th birthday when I started college. And here I am. Mom and Dad go, "See you later. We're driving 3 hours south." I had no one to tell me what to do, no rules. There was a punk club on every corner downtown. There was 3 or 4 places to see shows. They had shows 7 nights a week. Throw in beer, weed, and girls. I was sold. Sold. Done.
So by doing that, and then how soon was it again putting the puzzle pieces together, or the timeline from that, and then you and Roger and Vinny sitting in a room and being like, "Oh shit, we got this thing."
I've always said to people, bar none, we are still to this day one of the hardest methodically thinking working bands. Everything we work our ass off. I get asked questions, how did you guys make it? Or what would you do if you were a band? And I tell people straight out, you got to meet the right people, because I don't care how good you are. If you don't meet the right people along the way, the struggle is beyond real. I mean, I've known so many musicians that can run circles around me, both in songwriting, both as players. And I found the right group of guys, man. We were driven. So from that first demo in November of 91, I took cassette copies back and I would go to shows and I was passing them out. And we had the name Less Than Jake on it was a 4-song demo. And I would take them to shows and have our information inside, a phone number. And I passed out hundreds of those demos and stickers. I'd give away stickers for free. And so Vinny moved up in May of 92. I had already been talking to that bass player, as I mentioned. So May of 92, our first show was in July. So 2 months later, we played our first show as Less Than Jake. And then meeting Roger in December of 92, Roger officially joined the band in January of 93. 3 months later, we got our first horn player. Her name was Jessica. And Jessica started playing with us in March of 93. She played our first show. March 8th of 1993 at the Hardback Cafe in Gainesville, which is now a restaurant called Boca Fiesta. That first 7-inch record we put out in May of 93, and that was called Smoke Spot. And there was one ska song on it. The rest of them were just 3-chord punk rock songs. Those songs ended up on Losers, Kings, and Things We Don't Understand.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because that was like that was not a collabor. What would you call that?
A compilation of like all our 7 inches and early recordings.
Yeah, Fucked is. I remember hearing that song, even though I believe it's Roger singing. That was one of my favorite songs on that album.
Yeah, we both sing on that one, and that was a interesting song because that was an early tune where he sang the verse and then I sang what is like, I don't know, the pre-chorus of the chorus of that song, and I sing the end of the tune. Yeah, where right. If you listen back, like I should have sang the whole thing. It's really low for him. we didn't know that yet. We didn't realize that, hey, you got the high voice, you do the high shit. I got the lower grovelly voice. I'll do these parts, So we were definitely trying to find our footing back then.
I love that. I don't know. I remember just being 17 and hearing that and just going ape shit. Just out. Me and my friends would just hang out in front of a friend's house and just crank record like CDs and shit. I remember just going ape over that song all the fucking time.
That was one of the early ones where we were you could just tell we were still young. Like I would never release a song that has the word fuck in it today, 500 times, not for any other reason than, it's a bad word or whatever. It's just, it just shows how young we were and like, hey, we're going to be edgy and say fuck 100 times in a song,
But like you guys, I mean, there's a couple things there. I mean, there's a lot of things there, but even you saying that you went around and handed out the demo tapes and stickers, that was one thing I always knew about you guys. And I'm going to jump forward a little bit and go back, but I saw you guys play at Roseland in, I think, 98, and I think it might have been the Snowcore tour. I forget what it was, but you guys, at the end, you guys just came out and were just launching stickers into the crowd. And from a marketing standpoint, you guys were fucking on it. Like, you guys were always good at just bombarding people with, you have to leave here with something and remember us.
Oh, well, our shows in Gainesville, we went from the punk rock club that held 150 people to the 550 seater in a matter of 6 to 8 months. Not due to the fact that we were the greatest band yet, but our live shows were crazy.
Yeah.
We would go and I'd hit the Salvation Armies and the Goodwill stores in town, and I'd be like, hey, I'm doing this school project, but all I have is $10. Could I get all your stuffed animals? I'd be, go take them, kid. So I'd get I'd have like a truck full of stuffed animals that we would throw. The clubs at the end of the night would be, 2 feet deep in stuffing from stuffed animals. And we'd throw these out in the audience. And the toilet paper guns were bore out of that time period and all these other things. But we went from playing to 150 to 550 because, again, we were a marketing machine. We'd get a map out. We'd get a map out and go, okay, you're hitting this side of town. You're hitting this side of town. And I'd go to a copy shop in town called University Copy. Right, it was right there by the University of Florida. And I'd walk in brazenly. I'd go put the flyer in the copy machine. I'd run off 2,000 flyers. I'd put them in my backpack. I'd turn around. I'd walk in. It was all run by students that were stoned out of their mind and didn't give a shit anyways. I'd walk up to the counter and I go, how many copies? 4. Like deadpan. And they're like, 4. And they go, 32 cents. I'd hand them the money and I'd go. They used to have these big cutting machines too in there that you manual cut. So some of them would be like a regular, 11 by
17.
not 17. It was the small 8x10, like 8x10 sheet of paper.
Yeah, 8.5 by 11.
Yeah, 8.5 by 11. Sorry. Duh. And I would cut it into 4 because if you cut it into 4, they were like perfect for little handbills to shove in the dorm mailboxes at UF. So University of Florida had like probably, I don't know, 15 dorms on campus with probably 1,000 people in each dorm. So I'd get inside the dorms and go into all the mailbox slots and put a flyer of where we were playing. Then the other guys would be flying the telephone poles. This guy be in the downtown part. This guy be in the south side. This guy be in the north side. And we did that for every show. I mean, and when I say I'd go out and promote, this was on foot. Well, I'd be either on bike or on foot. I would leave and be gone for 5, 6, 7 hours doing this.
Did you feel two things? One, did you feel that you guys were good enough to be doing this to bring that many people? Or did you have enough confidence to go, we're that fucking good that, yes, people, if we pack a room, we're not going to be afraid that, oh shit, what have we done? Like, we can hold up our end of the bargain here.
I don't think that was ever the thought. I think that we just, for lack of a better word, we wanted to just throw a party every night. We were young.
Yeah.
We just wanted to drink beer, get fucked up, and just go crazy and just play music. You know, it was this unbridled energy that we all shared. And, you know, and I just said the word, you know, party and get fucked up. That was never that'll destroy a lot of bands. Our main focus was always the business side and making this as good. I use the term business loosely. It wasn't like we had this vision of like this big corporate thing, but I meant like we kept our shit together. Like we practiced really hard. We practiced a lot. Roger and I practiced our harmonies. We just tried to continually be a better band and make the live show wackier and crazier. Like, you know, one time we had a live wrestling match on stage. We brought in a fucking ring, and into this venue, and like I choreographed all it was all our friends. They were all the wrestlers. Some were masked. At the end we had a battle royal in the audience. People were diving out of this ring into the audience. Audience members are getting in. It was just like stuff like that. We were always planning and scheming, you know, just wacky stuff. So, you know, and that was a great question you asked, but there was never any forethought of can we deliver. It's just like, we're going to deliver something. I don't know what it's going to be, but we're going to deliver something. And whether you like it or not, we're going to have fun.
But you guys were like a perfect storm because you guys created an experience. You did all these things that would be textbook how to grow a business without even like knowing it, but not being like, okay, let's open chapter 3. We got to follow this. It was kind of instilled in you at the same time, even though before you said a band isn't going to make it unless they work their ass off. 1,000%. I totally agree with that. However, I know a bunch of people out there who are crazy good musicians, but their songs that they're writing or they're covering, like sure they can play a bass really well or the drums or something, but unless they can write something that's theirs that people can gravitate towards, it's not going to fucking go anywhere. So it's like you have to have. It's like you can throw a good party, but if everyone shows up and the party sucks, they're never gonna come back. But you guys also had a great way of, yes, throwing a great party, but your songs were fucking awesome at the same time. So I could see how you guys exploded. Because if you were a shit band and people were showing up to a 150 club to 550, and if the songs weren't driving them, then they'd be like, all right, that was okay, but I'm not gonna listen to this shit.
No, absolutely. But, you know, you got to remember though, you know, again, this was a time period where everything was word of mouth. It wasn't like I can go online and read about the show in an hour. I can see it on YouTube in 20 minutes after they played. This was word of mouth. So for us, it was just every day, every show we played, it's like this is the greatest, biggest day of our lives for this moment right now until the next moment. And we took that to each city. We kept spreading the fire to each city that we went to. You know, we didn't make any money the first, even being out on U.S. tours. It was the first couple of years because everything went back into the band. If we had any money, it's like, okay, here's your $5 for Taco Bell. Here's your $5 for Taco Bell. And like we'd eat. And then everything else went back into the band through promotion, through stickers, through, you know, giveaways. Like we were constantly, we put records out and knowing we were going to lose money on them. We did this rock and roll pizzeria. It came in a pizza box. It was a 7-inch.
Yeah, it wasn't like 7-inch was shaped as a pizza too, right?
Yeah, the whole thing was fucking like, it cost like $10 to do, and we sold it for like $4 to our mail order because again, this was the 90s, and you couldn't be a sellout. You couldn't sell your stuff for too much money, and you know, I was in a band with people that, you know, I think it was in hindsight, it was what we had to do, but I never subscribed to any of that bullshit. I told people back then that my band didn't ever want me to do interviews. They're like, dude, you can't say that. So I would stop doing interviews, but I would tell people, well, what do you think about signing to a major label? Dude, fucking show me the money. Yeah. I'll do it in a second. I want my band to be the biggest fucking band on the planet. I'm not out here fucking around. Like, I'm doing this for real. And that was the drive. And it wasn't about money. It wasn't. I just said money, but
it's like you wanted to keep doing it, so money's the fuel is the gas in the car, right?
Right. But I was never ashamed of what I wanted to aspire to be. It's what I wanted to be since I was a child. So, none of the scene politics ever mattered to me. I just wanted to play the next show and play to more people, And so eventually all these things led up to us going on our first U.S. tour. Pezcore had come out in March of 95. We left in June of 95, and we did 48 shows in 50 days. Across the East Coast, Midwest of the United States. New Jersey probably did 6 or 7, maybe 8 shows alone in Jersey on that show, because you got to remember, Jersey was a hotbed for punk rock in the 90s. Every fucking town had their scene, and there was our secret and why we waited so long to tour. We almost toured in early to mid 94, and we said, no, we're not ready yet. We knew. Again, I was, not to toot our horn, I am in a band with some smart motherfuckers. And we just sat back and went, no, we don't want to go out and lose money. And not even lose money. We don't want to stop what we're building here in Florida and take it out to play to 3 people in Milwaukee on a Tuesday night. We're not ready. So that year from 94 to 95, we were probably on 30 to 40 or more compilations, plus records and 7-inches we were doing with labels. So you'd get to Jersey and you'd be on a comp, and you knew, and you had already made sure that the show you were going to do at the American Legion Hall or wherever it was, the Manville Elks Lodge, which we played a number of times.
Oh, man.
Yeah. We knew that we were going to be playing with Bigwig. We were going to be playing with why am I blanking on their name right now? It'll come to me in a second. Sure. I want to remember this band. Weston, that's another band we used to play a ton with. Bigwig. So we knew that these bands had a following. Bigwig was worth 100 tickets. Weston was worth 100 tickets. This band was worth this. And so there'd be like a 7 to 8 band bill, and we were on it. So we were guaranteed to play to 400 or 500 kids in Jersey. That first tour we went out on. So, yeah, did we have our duds? Yeah, I remember actually Milwaukee was one that was a dud on that first tour. We played a place called The Globe with Slapstick, Brendan Kelly, and there was maybe 5 people there that night. But, and coincidentally, Milwaukee, we weren't on a compilation, and we didn't have bands from Milwaukee that we built a show around that had a following. So, but most of the shows on that tour, we made sure we're with big bands that were in that regional scene or that local scene, and that we had a song or 2 on a compilation in that area, so people knew what our music sounded like.
See, I think I have so many questions that came out of that. I think there's a younger audience that wouldn't understand this podcast unless they connect the dots and say, well, the bands that I like now have mentioned these bands, we're going to go back. Or they're like, because you guys are still around, you're still relevant. So obviously people are going to be like, yeah, we're younger generation are following you guys. But just the advice you gave out right there about even today, that the fact that people just rely on Instagram and digital media for marketing, there's like zero, I wouldn't say zero, but a very small percentage of people who are marketing with paper and flyers. And I think if a band was really good and they were doing that, and doing that idea about trying to just get their songs as many towns as possible before going there. Obviously now it's going to be hard to do that, but that, I think there's such great advice there. That shit can still work.
Well, again, we came from an analog world into a digital world, but you could still take those analog principles and apply them today. So I do, here's a shameless plug. I do live one-on-one video sessions with people, and I've been doing it for some time now. And I have people that'll do these sessions with me we'll collaborate on songs. We'll work on their songs. Sometimes they'll want to talk about their social media presence, or how do we go on tour? How do we build up a following? Wow. And I tell them straight up, basically what I just told you. I tell them, look, you have the internet, but everyone has the internet. It doesn't, if only a certain amount of people in the punk rock world had the internet and you were sending it out and there wasn't many other bands doing it. And you were like, okay, there's a band coming to Milwaukee. It's one of the only bands that's on the internet, and they're coming here, and we know about it. But the internet's a wide open, as we know, social media is a wide open field. So your reach on social media, yeah, it's important for sure. But what's really important is to go, okay, I'm going to contact XYZ band in Milwaukee, in Detroit, in Chicago, in Dayton, Ohio, in Nashville, Tennessee, in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm going to contact the bands in that scene, and I'm going to put shows together based around, can we hop on your show? Can we put and then, when you guys come to Florida, where we have a fan base, we'll trade out shows. We'll put you on our bill when you come to Florida. And that's how we did it, and you can still do that today because, again, going out and that's why we waited. We waited till we were ready and we had those connections to play shows because we already knew what we had in Florida. It's like, how do we spread this fire? We were going to Daytona and playing to 400 or 500 kids, Orlando, 500 kids, Jacksonville, 700-800 kids, Gainesville, 700-800 kids. How do we take this out of Florida? And we knew that we had to align ourselves with all those tricks and that I just laid out, and getting with bands and such.
Have you done a, and I'm going to jump out of this in a second, but have you done like a master class or like a Skillshare about how to do this and put it online so you can just kind of have it sitting out there and making money?
No, but I am in the works. My agent knows and is I'm going to be getting booked into universities and high school to give motivational speeches on music.
Dude, that's sick. I think if you, I don't know, I mean, I work for myself and I've been in media, I do animations and graphic design and all this shit. So I've worked for myself since like 2006. I mean, just having something on like Teachable or Skillshare, I mean, that stuff is like kind of like, the reoccurring revenue where it's like, hey, I posted this and people are signing up for it. But I don't know. Just an idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's, if I guess there's a way to do that where they can get into the room and have a one-on-one session where you do that. But I'm more interested in, cause I've been to some of those I went to one the other night. It was a recording seminar. This guy was talking about these new EQs that came out, and I have a home studio. So, it was free. It was an online course, and you get in there and you can just see him talking. He can't field your questions or do anything, but long story short, I pretty much do the same thing you're speaking of with the live.
You like the one-on-one. You like the live
one-on-one
audience. Yeah.
Yeah, I do because I feel that I can really help someone with specific questions.
Yeah. There's a website, if you ever want to check it out, it's the NJPP Archives, where this guy, Joe Polito, pretty much every podcast episode I've talked about this, but he created this archive online with every Jersey band, like every demo. And he has a list of all of the flyers. So I actually went back to his 96 flyers, and I was looking for like, Less Than Jake in the mix. And was one of the bands you were trying to think of before either Plan A Project or True Zero?
Well, I know Dan from Plan A Project really well, and yeah, no, it wasn't them. It was a band that began with an S, and I can see the
Shower
singer.
with Goats, Steve.
No, not Steve. No. It's
I won't hold you here too long, but
no, it's gonna come to me, man. And God, they had a weird name. We played with them in a backyard in Nutley, New Jersey. Yeah, we played because we played the backyard. I'll never forget. It was a backyard. It was us, Bigwig, and oh God, what were they called? Begins with an S. I think it's 2 words. Huh? No.
I'm like literally just on this page right now trying to find
the singer. The singer had a mohawk, and I remember he reminded me of a punk rock David Lee Roth. He just, which is really funny.
No idea who this is.
Oh man, it's killing me because I wanted to.
Sticker, speed bump. What the fuck? I'm not gonna hold you hostage here, but I really secondhand is one.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. It'll come to me.
Well, I talked to Steve from Shower with Goats, and he was talking about how when you guys were on tour, you stayed at his house. You're on your first tour to Jersey. At his.
Yeah, we did it. We did a show in his living room too.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, which was crazy. Yeah, I've known Steve. Like he was one of those kids that he was in, and this is a kind of a shitty term today when you call it scene kids, but he was a scene kid back then that was a punk rock scene kid. Like he knew his scene, he knew his shit. And like, he would write us and be like, guys, I want you to come play here. And you were guaranteed because, someone like Steve knew everybody. He was going to all the shows and, he was, well entrenched, knew all the record stores, knew where to put up flyers for you. That was the other thing. I'd call ahead of time, be like, hey, can you put up flyers in the record store, in the toy stores, in the tobacco stores, in the bong shops? Yeah, in the surf shops. Can you put the, flyers? Can you put it, go take here, I'm going to send you a stack of our demo tapes. Can you, or our cassettes or our 45, can you take them and put them in there for us and tell them they can sell them, keep the money. We don't care. Just get our name out there. So we were constantly doing stuff like that.
Did you feel at that time when all this was happening, because at the same time you're like writing songs, which I want to get into, but did you kind of just have this feeling in your gut like this is exciting and awesome and holy shit, this is working?
Yeah, it was never, again, like this grand scheme of like, we didn't know where it was headed. We
But it
just
felt good, right?
yeah, it felt great. And we knew it was working. We knew it was working because there was very few Milwaukee's to 5 people. Those shows, yeah, we played plenty of those in the early days, but for the most part, once that first US tour started, it was on. We were no longer the playing to 5 people was few and far between. We were playing to 70, 80, 100, 150, 200 people on up. It's pretty regularly then, and then it never went backwards, starting in about 96.
Well, you talked about some bands or just musicians that let's talk more about bands for a second. When you guys were doing this, did you see bands around you that you thought were really good, but they just weren't breaking that maybe 20 people at a crowd, or like they go on tour and they're like, man, we mostly played to like 5 or 10 kids every show. Like, did you know any bands at that time like that?
Yeah, a band called Hagfish, which Zach from Hagfish now plays in Rise Against.
Oh, okay.
And
Right.
him and his brother were in Hagfish. They played Gainesville, and these guys came out, and they were, to this day, one of the best live bands I've ever seen in my life. I was like, holy shit, how does nobody know about these guys? I think they got signed to RCA maybe, and like the record came out and sold like 20 copies, and no one ever knew about them. I mean, yeah, there was tons of bands like that I knew, and that goes back to. And it's not a knock against Hagfish. I don't know what their marketing strategies and stuff were, but a lot of it went back to like, we never trusted labels. We never, even when we were on independent labels or majors, didn't matter. We knew if we wanted something to happen, it had to happen for ourselves. Like, oh, the label's going to put flyers in a record store. No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're fucking lying. They're not going to. We have to do it. I have to call the surf shop in New Jersey. I have to send the box of cassettes there. We're probably not going to get paid for them. Cool. All right, let's do it.
Is there a point, because either way you guys are writing really good albums. Do you think there would be, I'm trying to word this right. Do you think there would have been a point if you guys didn't have that? Success is in the eye of the beholder, right? So you said that you were showing up to shows and there wasn't just that 5 kids showing up. Do you think that if you caught a wave where you guys were hitting a wall and you weren't getting the amount of crowds that you had, do you think you would have possibly have stopped at some point?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that. And I've never thought about it because it didn't happen. It was never a time where I questioned, like, what am I doing? Should I have stayed in school? Maybe this isn't working. It just kept going. And the excitement level, we put our phone number and everything. So like, by mid-95, the phone in our apartment was ring, 372-6465. That was the number. Area code 904. That thing rang off the fucking hook all day. And we were getting 200, 300, 400 letters of fan mail that we were answering back each one on our dime. Some people throw a stamp in there, but for the most part, we were paying for it. We'd write every fan back. We were doing mail order out of the apartment. We'd have this huge, long folding table we'd set up in the morning, and we'd all sit there, all 5 guys in the band, and we'd like take a stack of mail, start going through it. Hey guys, this guy sent an album cover. He wants us to send it back to him. Like, no postage, nothing inside. This shit, 99.9% of bands would have fucking thrown it in the garbage. That would have been the end of it. I would pass it around the table. We would all sign it. I'd put it in a new envelope, put a stamp on it, and it would get taken to the post office later that week when we did a mail drop. Every fan counted. To this day, people come up and go, "Hey, dude, can you sign this? It's the letter you sent me in 1996. I've had it all these years." Every tour that still happens. That people come up and, "I used to be part of your fan club. You used to write me. Here's a letter I got from you."
I remember this too, but that was also, there was a myth, like, I don't say mythology. There was like this aura around your band because you guys did that, and I almost before you had talked about social media. There was no social media where now a band can play a show and then all of a sudden they're on YouTube. I think that would have worked against you guys potentially, or in two ways. It could have worked to open people's eyes to that, but then they would have gotten that experience through a video on YouTube. But like, I don't have to go there. But we had heard about this ska punk band that was from Florida, and they had the best live shows, and there'd be a guy dressed up as a teddy bear, and there'd be wrestling matches, but we didn't get a chance to see it. So when you guys came through, we were like, we have to fucking go to this show. So I think it actually worked in your favor that you guys did not have social media back then, because it was a word of mouth of like, what the fuck is going on here? Oh, I've got to see this.
Well, and that, yeah, and that's something I touched on earlier. This was all word of mouth. And we had to be better than we were yesterday, so that word of mouth kept spreading. And we saw it. We would go play Athens, Georgia, and there'd be like 60 people there. And then we'd go about our tour, and then we'd go home and do mail order for 3 weeks, and we'd be on the next tour. And then inevitably 3, 4, 5 months later, we'd be back in Athens. And that those 60 people just didn't double. Or maybe, we didn't get 10 more people, or it just didn't double. There was now 180 people in that venue. God. Those 60 people told everybody they knew, holy shit, this band came out. They got a guy dressed as a bear, and then he fucking lit this thing on fire, and he was blowing fire on stage, and the ceiling tiles, caught fire. These guys are insane. Like, it was every night. We were just, but a lot of that was testament to how young we were and how hungry we were, and we were just having fun.
Yeah, but the songs you guys wrote matched that. Like, even like, Johnny Quest thinks we're sellouts, and like Liquor Store, and then even the songs matched the energy, matched the aura of what the fuck you guys were. So like, did you find that between Pezcore and then like, let's stick around like Pezcore and Losing Streak before Hello Rock for you, like, did you find that this shit was just flowing out of you where you weren't struggling to write music?
Wow. I don't know.
I'm really like waking you up to what you probably weren't paying attention to back then.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which is a good thing, actually.
It just kept snowballing. I don't really know how to even answer that question. It's just, there wasn't a lot of thought. There was a ton of thought, but there wasn't a lot of thought in some of the questions you're asking. You know what I mean? It wasn't like we got a grand scheme here. It was literally, today's the most important day of our lives right now, until we woke up the next day, and then we tackled the next day.
Damn. I mean, that's something even just to get, I'm sure, have you ever said something like that at the talks that you give, where these bands, as people like listening to, they're just like, holy shit, like, had they come up to you and said, like, after you said something like that, they're like, wow, I haven't thought of it like that?
Well, I don't know about that specific thing I just said, but yeah, there's been things before where, hey, when you said this, it made a lot of sense. And there's also been things that I said that I shouldn't have said, that worked against me. being the front guy in a punk band, you could imagine. But so yeah, I think that I really stress that it's kind of like, I always tell people, I tell a lot of younger bands this: you got and I don't weightlift, obviously, but you got a weightlifting competition coming up in 6 months. You all of a sudden, everyone else starts training right when they know about it. You're like, a month out, I'm going to start training for it. And you train super, super hard, and you get there and you're not anywhere near as good as the rest of the people there. I always say little victories lead to huge victories. If you got a mountain over here, you want to move over here, you don't get the biggest shovel and move it in one day. You take a spoon, you start doing, okay, today I'm going to do as best as I can on this section. I'm going to hyper focus. I'm going to do this. And the next day I'm going to do this. And then 6 months later, the mountain's moved. Whatever you try to do with that proverbial mountain is better than somebody that did a rush job in the last hour.
It's like it's like, how do you eat an elephant? It's like one bite at a time. It's like you just take on too much and it just becomes overwhelming and you stop.
Yep.
What was like one of the funnest experiences at a show that you can remember from back then, where you were like, wow, that I didn't see that coming, and that was amazing?
Well, I mean, again, yeah, people, it was a job to take a camera to a show back then. I mean, most people had, if they were going to take a camera, it was a disposable camera. But thank God that, actually this probably wouldn't even happen now because, everyone's got a camera in their pocket with their smartphone. But there was just a lot of nudity at our shows back then, men and women. And it was just hilarious because it was so ridiculous. Like, all of a sudden I would just see the guys in my band. I'd be singing and playing, but out of the corner of my eye, I'd see Roger just with his jaw on the ground. I'd look over at the horns, and then I'd turn around and like there'd be some dude standing on Vinny's bass drum, like completely naked with like a drumstick hanging out of his asshole, like spreading his butt for the crowd. Like this was like every night at our shows. Like, just like, what the fuck is going on? There was this girl that used to get on stage with us in Philly every time we played. And the last time she did it, like, she got yanked out by security. It was a whole thing because the last time she did it was probably around 2000. And by that time, we were selling out the Electric Factory in Philly, which is 2,200 tickets. But she shows up she would just get on stage and she would like go behind the amps, take her clothes off, and she'd come out and skank and dance for like a song. And then she'd nonchalantly go back behind the amps and put her clothes back on. And it was just like, okay, whatever floats your boat.
What drove people to start what do you remember the first time someone did that? And then I'm sure word of mouth got out and someone was like, oh, I'm gonna do that now. Like, do you remember the first time?
Yeah, I remember one of the first US tour. We were in Athens, Georgia. There was a band from Georgia called Trace Kids, TRES, like the number 3 in Spanish. Trace Kids. Yeah, the drummer decided he was going to take one of Vinny's sticks and put it in his ass, and the drummer of that band, and he's running around our stage, and then like at some point he takes a stick out and like he's going through the crowd, and people were just, parting like the Red Sea, and just stuff like that just went on all the time. There was a lot of fights back then because, punk rock was this relatively on a big level. It was a new thing. So one night we'd be at a Elks Lodge, and next night we'd be at like a dance club that someone rented out that night as a punk rock venue. And like, they'd have the meatheads that would, be there to do security and bounce on dance night that are now at our show. And they see kids like running in a circle, hitting each other and moshing and slam dancing. And like, what the fuck is this? So like, they're taking people out in headlocks, and then the crowd would turn on them and they'd start fighting them. And every day was something like that.
I remember I was so enthralled by you guys back then. I had to consume as much stuff that came to me that was about you. So like when I think I remember this. I was in drama class. I think it was my senior year. My friend Jen DeLetto, she came in because she went to the Ridgewood show that you guys had played, and she brought pictures of you guys playing. I was like, oh my God, like, what do they look like? Like, this is crazy. And then I'm like, so I'm seeing that. And then Alan Rappaport was in Lane Meyer. Like, he actually named our band. So Alan.
We played Alan Rappaport's pool party.
That's what I was going to talk about. And he showed me photos from that, and I was just blown away. I'm like, wait, these guys played your backyard? And he was like, yeah. And I saw the pictures. I was like, this is crazy. And everyone who's played that, like, I interviewed My Pal Trigger and then Discount, and I don't know if that was the same show. I think you guys just played, it was you, and it was a luau themed, right?
I don't recall the luau theme. I remember there was a barbecue. I remember his dad was there barbecuing, but I can tell you about that show. So we're driving to it. And we realize, because I used to tour manage in those days, and I realized that, holy shit, I don't have his address. I can't find his number. What do you mean, dude? I don't have it. What are you talking about? Dude, it's not my fucking book. It's not my notes. Dude, everyone's bummed out. We're freaking out. How are we going to go play this show? Like, we're going to lose the day here. And every day, like I said, was important. It was a day to sell merchandise. It was a day to put money into the gas tank by selling a shirt. Like, how the fuck are we going to do this? And so we pull off the side of the road, and our old sax player, Darren, goes, we knew the guy's name. We knew Alan Rappaport. So Darren and him were big Star Wars nerds. So Darren, we pull off, and Darren looks in the phone book and calls a comic book toy store. Okay, and this is no bullshit. And the guy goes, yeah. He goes, so I'm in this band. This is going to sound weird, but there's a guy named Alan Rappaport. I'm pretty sure he buys toys. He's like, yeah, I know him. It's like, dude, where does he live? How do we get in touch with him? And like, the guy knew somebody who knew somebody that got us the address to Alan's house. And we were a little bit late, but we ended up making the show that day.
As soon as you said you called like a toy shop or a comic book, I was like, oh, I know exactly where they're going with this because that totally sums up Alan. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Do you follow? He actually has an Instagram account where he poses like Lego characters as Star Wars, like in Star Wars scenes, and he takes amazing photography of it. It's incredible. I can't. I'm like trying to find his. Oh, it's Alan Rappa. If anyone's listening, it's ALANRAPPA. So yeah,
I'm
you
I'm
can check it
still
out.
trying to concentrate on this podcast and listen to your questions as I'm thinking of this damn band in Jersey. It's driving me crazy. They were a
Okay,
punk band.
so
We got to figure it out.
yeah, you said you probably got another 10 minutes maybe, so I think we're gonna,
I don't care. I don't care if we talk about another thing. We're gonna find this damn band. If I have to call Tom Pettit from Bigwig to figure it out, it's killing me.
what was their style?
It was punk rock in the vein of like Bigwig. The singer played bass, blonde mohawk, skinny kid. He sang and played bass.
It wasn't
I remember.
Sticker, so it wasn't Sticker.
No. And maybe it didn't begin with an S either. I don't want that to throw us off.
Oh, blonde hair mohawk bass player. And this is
Yeah.
96?
95.
Okay, let me go to
95.
95 Flyers. I bet it might be in there. Everyone, I bet the person
Punk
listening to this
band.
knows there's like
Yeah,
screaming.
they're like screaming, "You dickhead! It's this band."
You piece of shit. I
Punk
can't believe you
band,
don't know
New
this.
Jersey, 1995. I'm doing a search right now. Let's see what I can come up with. This is killing me.
Let's see.
Music of New Jersey.
Okay, so I'm just looking to read some flyers. There's Bug Light, Thirsty, True Zero, which we already said. Um, it wasn't Felix Frump. That was Tom.
Felix Frump. Thank you, Felix Frump.
Wow. Well, that was Tom's band before he started Bigwig, or he was in Felix Frump, then he left and he
Okay,
started Bigwig.
then that's right. Tom was in Felix Frump. Yes,
Yeah.
Felix Frump. That was the band. Thank you.
Oh. I interviewed Tom and I talked about the time when they were playing in Warped Tour and it was just like 97 and you guys were the stage next to them and you finished and then all of a sudden Roger came out of fucking nowhere and just started crowd surfing to them. I was like, this is crazy, like, because there was always like we had heard that you guys and Bigwig were like friends, and just to see that, I was like, whoa.
Oh yeah, we love Big Wig, and yeah, I mean every band that was in Jersey at that time, a Lifetime, and we played with everybody, great shows, and it was just crazy. It was like one day, like I said, we'd be at a bar or a punk club, and the next night we'd be at a Elks Lodge or a basement of a church. Remember we played the what was that called? It was a church.
In Philly?
No, it wasn't. Well, we've done the First United Church in Philly, of course. That venue.
Ridgewood. Yeah, I think that might have been Ridgewood or Allendale. It was in Jersey, the church you're talking
It
about,
was in
right?
Jersey. And we played with Bobby Steele from Misfits. We played with him at that show.
Oh.
And but anyways, yeah, we were just that time was crazy because we were just, again, I can't stress enough how important it was for us to get out there. And Jersey was just a scene that embraced us. Chicago was another scene that embraced us. Slapstick certainly helped with that. Like some of the shows we did with Slapstick were just fucking legendary around that time. We'd play Fireside Bowl in Chicago and just they legally could put 500 people in that place. And I bet there was double that. I mean, it was just insane. It was exciting times. We were young. We didn't care. At the end of the night, we'd get on the microphone. Hey, anybody got a place we can crash? Yeah, man, you can come to my house. And some night you end up at a punk squat with no heat, no electricity, and you'd be like, okay, I guess this is where we're sleeping tonight. And the next night you'd be like going through a gated security guard gate through rolling hills, be some surgeon's house. That you'd stay at. You wake up in the morning and you in this 10-bedroom house with 2 pools in the backyard overlooking a lake, and the mom would have eggs and breakfast made for you.
Yeah, we had a couple of those experiences where it would be this house where people were at the end of the night decided they wanted to play the game of let's throw bottles into the bathroom because this is our last night here. And then there'd be the one that were like, oh yeah, our parents are out of town and we have this giant mansion, sleep wherever you guys want, and we ordered pizza for you, and it was like whatever you want to watch on whatever movies you want to watch on TV. Like fuck, dude. A couple questions before we wrap it up. In the beginning, I just want to kind of go back to that when you were talking about the bands that got you into like listening to punk. Did you? Because I know you guys have played with a bunch of those bands because they were still around, like Bad Religion. Obviously, you guys have played with. Were there any bands that when you showed up like Bad Religion and you were playing a show with them, you're like, dude, I fucking got into this music because of your band?
Oh, of course.
I mean, you guys have played with like, I mean, Christ, you got like, how many years you guys been around? He's 30 now?
Yeah, well,
25?
we started in '92, so it's been 28 years. It'll be 28 years in July.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys have gone on, Christ, I mean, you were still touring up until recently because it's right. It was like because Vinny left the band. Was it last October?
He left in October. Excuse me. He left in August of 2018.
Okay, that because I had interviewed him literally like a couple days after he had announced that.
Yeah. So he left then, and then we played our first show with Matt out in Seattle maybe 2 weeks later. But yeah, we toured up until November of last year. We recorded a new record last December. It's called Silver Linings. It's going to be out this fall. The reason it's taken so long to come out is because of everything that's gone on globally recently. So we're working on a release date, hopefully October of this year. We played our last show on February 28th at a casino up in Connecticut. And we had a tour slated for May, all this summer and into the fall. So we're still out there. For a band that's been around as long as us, there's not too many bands that go as hard as we still do.
That's awesome. Well, I could ask you 1,000 more questions, but I want to be, aware of your time. So
we'll do it again. Hit me up in hit me up in a couple months. We'll talk again. We'll give everybody part 2.
All right. Well, before we do that, which I'm totally down for. Okay, 2 questions before we go. One, I know you already plugged some things, but like I just throw it out there again. Like, what would you like to plug? And this could be as many things as you want.
Yeah, got a lot of stuff in the works. Like I said, I got a book coming out. You can find out about all this stuff at ChrisDeMakes.com, which just that will route you to my YouTube page that has all my videos for my custom songs on there. I can write you a special someone in your life, your very own one-of-a-kind custom song. I got all kinds of different song packages with that. As mentioned, I do live one-on-one video sessions. I got the book coming out later this year. Less Than Jake is busy. As I mentioned, have a new record coming out. I'm going to be getting into doing some speaking at colleges and whatnot, high schools, music seminars, different things, whoever will have me, essentially. And I'm working on something with my producer of Chris DeMakes A Podcast, which wanted to mention that too. I do a podcast called Chris DeMakes A Podcast. My wife thought of that name, actually.
That's
So I used to get shit as a kid, like Krista makes a pizza, Krista makes a pie. It's like, okay, I'm gonna shove up everyone's ass that used to make fun of me. And so she's like, you should name it that. I go, you think? And everyone I've said it to thought it was funny. But so yeah, do the podcast. 2 episodes are out so far. The episode next week is actually Roger from Less Than Jake. I had him on the show. I got some amazing guests out of the gate. Bill Stevenson is going to be my guest for Father's Day, a special Father's Day episode. Bill from Descendants, and that's he gave me one of the most amazing interviews or podcasts I could ever imagine. So yeah, man, just busy and like I said, I got something with my producer Chris, who's also my manager. And Chris plays in a band called Punchline. They're from Pittsburgh. He's the bass player in Punchline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Chris and I have been working together for some time now. And him and I are putting together our next project, which is going to be insanely amazing. And we're still working on that. So I don't have much to talk about yet with that. But yeah, everything is rolling straight ahead. And thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, man. And just super quick before I ask the last question, Punchline, didn't they record with Chris Badami and Portrait Studios? Is it the same band?
I believe so. I'm not sure if that's, but they were on Fuel by Ramen. Punchline.
Okay, because I know
Yeah.
that. Okay, I have to check it out. All right, last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Well, I don't know if this was ever a written ethic, a written rule, but I've always maintained that a couple things. If you go play on somebody else's show and you're supposed to be on stage at 8:00, get your ass on stage at 8:00. And even more importantly, if you got a half hour, I can't understand bands to this day that do this. You got a half hour, you have 40 minutes to play, and they'll clock in at like 26 minutes and they leave the stage. Play your allotted time if you're given. Why would you go out and shortchange yourself or the people there to see you? So that's the thing I take away. That's important to me.